Hi, I'm Chris from CodeReviewVideos.com, and in this video we're continuing on with our untested wallpaper update process. So as we saw towards the end of the previous video, we can still create new wallpapers and we can edit them and change the slug, but when we try and change the image, nothing actually happens. So to understand why this is, we need to look at some code under our source app bundle event listener wallpaper listener. We can see we have all our logic inside pre-persist, and then very early on in this series we created the pre-update. And we said that when we'd sort of figured out how to do it for creating new wallpapers, we would extract most of this out and then share it between pre-update and pre-persist because it was going to be a very, very similar process. Now, before we go any further, it's probably best if we jump under the config for this app, under services, and then under our event listener, wallpaper listener service definition. I'm going to duplicate that line, so that's just Command and D on a Mac. I think it's just Control and D on Windows and whatnot. And we'll say pre-update. So this time, whenever there's an update event, we're also going to call pre-update. So pre-update being already defined here. And the only reason that we really need to split these into two different methods is because the arguments that we're going to get are slightly different. So for both pre-update and pre-persist, we want to do roughly the same thing. We're going to declare a private function here. In fact, if I just do prif and tab that out, it should do it for me. And we'll just say upload wallpaper. Or maybe we could just call it upload. Now we can't add a type hint here, unfortunately, because, as we will see in a minute, we don't actually know what we're going to get. So we'll just say we're going to get given it an entity, and then all of this needs to be copied out and popped in here. Okay, so upload gets given an entity, and then we check if we're not an instance of wallpaper, then return false. We could, in theory, copy that bit out, pop it into both of these methods, and then you wouldn't need to do the check, and then you could type hint there to be a wallpaper. It's entirely up to you, but essentially the process is the same. We're going to get the entity from whatever event args we've been given, and then we're going to call this upload given that entity. Now you could even rewrite this if you wished to be this upload and then pop that in there, making sure to remove the trailing semicolon. It's the same thing. So the only reason that the upload method is private is because I don't want people to be able to call that on our wallpaper upload listener. Anyway, let's go back to our code now and see if that has changed anything. So we've got our Solana Beach. I'm going to edit that. I'm going to set this off to be, in fact, we will leave the slug as is for the moment. We'll say our image wants to be changed to space 1. We'll save it. And sad times, it's not updated. So we go back and we edit it again, and we'll just change this now to be space. So we've changed the slug and we also changed the image. We'll save that. And what do you know, this time it does work, which is just a bit weird. Okay, so why this works is not very intuitive, but essentially our listener is not noticing that we've changed the file if that's the only thing that we change, and that's because the listener looks for changes on the entity. In our case, the entity is going to be our wallpaper, and if we look at our wallpaper, and under the file property, we can see it's not got any annotations. It's not really known to be a field that the database should care about. So it just doesn't spot that the change has been made unless we change a different field, and then it does notice that, and then it picks up the file change as well. So I don't have a definitive solution to this. I have a hack that's sort of generally accepted as the way to do this, or the way to fix this problem. And it's we're going to use timestamps. So we're going to add timestamps to our wallpaper entity, which is just to say we're going to add in a created at and updated at property. And then whenever this wallpaper changes, all we need to do is update the updated at timestamp, and that should be sufficient to trigger this process. Now, the one thing that's sort of important, I guess, to cover is that just because we changed the updated at doesn't have any history as to what changed. Now, that's a completely separate can of worms. It's quite an interesting can of worms, honestly, but I'm going to keep the lid on that for the moment. So I'm going to start off by annotating the entity as a whole with ORM has lifecycle callbacks. And then I'm just going to do this down at the very bottom, but in your case, I would advise making this a little bit tidier. So we'll just have two new fields, created at and updated at. This will be a date time, and we will set ORM, the column, the name of created at, the type of date time, and we'll say it's nullable false. And likewise, I'll copy that across to here, making sure to update the column name. I'm going to generate some getters and setters. But I'm actually not going to take a property there. Let's get rid of that. So I'm going to say when this set created at is called, I'm just going to set a new date time. You could be explicit and say now. And again, I'll do the same for updated at as well. So whenever we're created at and updated at, effectively at the same time. Likewise, set updated at. It's going to do something very similar. But equally important, we need to make sure that the updated at is triggered whenever we set the file. So we'll just say if the file has been set, then this set updated at. We don't need to pass anything in, remember, so we should be good. Now we've made a change to our schema as a result of these new class properties. So we'll need to generate a new migration and then apply it. And then we'll migrate upwards. Okay, looks good. And before I forget, we need to add in the appropriate annotations onto the setters. So just above there, I'll add in ORM pre-persist. And likewise for set updated at, I'll add in ORM pre-update. So if we go back to our site now, so we've got our space 1, slug of space. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to set it to Solana Beach. We're not going to change the slug. And ho, we hit on an issue here. And that's because I've been mucking around. Perhaps should have reloaded the fixtures before doing that. So let's get rid of that image. The Solana Beach. We'll go back. Try again. So we got a wallpaper set to Solana Beach. Slug has not changed. We save it, but our image is actually updated properly this time. So there's still a couple of issues that we need to address. Firstly, I'd still like to get this little preview going on. And secondly, when we go to delete this, so if we delete that now, we're on Solana Beach is our image. The record gets deleted, but if we look inside our project, the Solana Beach image is still there. So that's another thing that we need to resolve as well. But that's coming up in the very next video.